And she went another 15 miles on fumes.
She told me herself, so we're gonna go on a date. She and me, her and I, me and her.
Well, Dad, we were kind of hoping to save that till after dinner.
No, I want to hear about it now.
Maxine said if they needed help, they would give me a call.
No, you're leaving. You want to know why? Because I gotcha.
I'm amazed at how that boy could stand in my kitchen in front of my face and lie to me like that.
I'm going to stand up to Mrs. Huxtable.
Well, I don't think you want to do that.
Your wife won't let you do anything.
Hi, my name is Miriam and this is the Black TV Show podcast, currently talking about the Cosby Show Season 3. Welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 62, the Cosby Show Season 3, episode 14, Rudy Spends the Night. This episode aired in January 15th, 1987. The synopsis of this episode is Rudy is spending the night with her grandparents. Denise is going out with her friends to the village and invites Vanessa to go with her. Theo is waiting for the news to go out with a girlfriend. And when that fails through, Cliff creates a men's night. So basically, we start off with Theo running to get the phone thinking it is Lana, but it's not. It's Denise's friend, Jeanette. And, he basically tells Jeanette, like, can you just, like, get off this damn phone? Because I am waiting for a call. And, of course, he can't do that. So he calls for Denise, phone. And then Cliff is there. And Theo's like, oh, you might be wondering what I'm doing. And Theo says, I'm waiting for a call from... And he doesn't say who he's waiting a call from. So Cliff starts guessing. So he was like, Tanya? Theo says, no, we broke up. And then Cliff says, Randy, she went back to her old boyfriend. And then Cliff says, Condola. It didn't work out with Condola. And then Maxine, he's not interested in her. More interested in her friend, Lana Herman. And so tonight, Maxine and Lana are going to be studying, and they said that they'll contact him if they needed help. And Cliff points out, oh, they haven't called yet, so clearly they don't need your help. I like that. And so Lana has it all. Like, out of all the other girls, she has it all. All the other girls gave it to her. And so Rudy has her bags packed, ready to go for her sleepover at grandparents' house. At this point, Theo's gone. And then her luggage is very full because there are 3 stuffed animals in her luggage that originally was not there when Cliff was helping her pack her bag. And apparently those animals are her necessities. I don't think they are a necessity, but if you think about it, if we're talking about therapy, they probably is her necessity. They probably give her a lot of, mental health therapy. They're her psychologists, certain things. There's certain things in life that you're like, you can't live without, so maybe, yeah, I guess we could agree with Rudy on that, but for everyone else, we're like, they're useless. They're just stuffed animals. Okay. And so, there was no room for her toothbrush, her pajamas, comb, and brush, so she took it out. So Cliff says, we'll get another luggage. And so then Rudy asks, like, do grandparents know how to raise little kids? And, I feel like this would be a question I would ask when I was a kid. For me, I was never raised by my grandparents, I was never raised by my grandparents. I've met my 2 grandmothers, but I was never, I didn't spend most of my life with them. So, you question that. You're like, can they raise children? But then you think about it. In order to raise you, your parents would have had to learn how to raise children from their own parents. So, of course, grandparents would know how to raise children, okay? And so that was a good question. And we cut to Vanessa's room. She's studying, and Denise comes, and we find out she was talking to Jeanette. And apparently Jeanette has some friends from NYU that they're going to meet at the village. And Denise offers Vanessa to come with her. And, Vanessa's shocked, you want me, your little sister? And she was like, yeah, sure. I would love for you to come. And so they will say that, Vanessa's in college. Because if you think about it, like, I didn't, like, there's gonna be the next episode, because I already watched the episode after this. She states that she's 13. She does not look 13. I did not look 13. The way that Vanessa looks, I did not look like her. Like, if I look for a photo of me when I was 13, I did not look like her. Of course, I am short. I'm 5'2", but like Tempest, she looks way older than her age. But I know when they got casted, they were all at the age that they were casted for. So yeah, to me, like, I could have said, like, there's a scene later on, like, where they're all dressed up in Cliff's clothes, and they look like they're the same age that they're friends. And I'm like, she really looks like she could be in college. So they're gonna say she's in college, and Vanessa was like, I want to say that I'm from UCLA freshman. And originally she said med school, and Denise was like, you're pushing it. And so Denise says we have to look extra funky since we're going to the Village. I've never been to the Village. I've been to New York once. Only for 3 days, so I can't say that I got to see much of New York. I've heard about the Village. If I have not stated in previous episodes, a few years ago I was a cast assistant to Bob Odenkirk. He, in his 20s, he was in New York doing Saturday Night Live, and he was telling me that he would spend a lot of his time in the Village. And when he was in the city that I currently live, there's a specific spot in our city that reminded him about the Village. So he would always spend a lot of time there because it was, he was reminiscing of what the Village life was. And he said that those were the good old days, basically. So I feel like the Village is the type of place for a lot of young people. I think that's what the Village is about. If you're a listener that's from New York, I would love to hear your point of view of the Village. As I said, I definitely don't have experience going there. So I would love to hear your stories about what it's like there. Do you gotta dress up some funky, like Denise says? Let me know at Black TV Shows Pod at Twitter and Instagram. I really do care and want to know, because if I go to New York next time, I want to, should I go there? Let me know. And so they're going to wear Cliff's clothes, and they're not going to ask him for them. They're just going to take it, because, he's not going to remember that his clothes were taken out of his closet. And apparently, he forgets. So the phone rings, and Theo runs to the kitchen, the phone in the kitchen, and it's Cockroach pretending to be Lana. And so Theo's like, get off the phone, you're taking the line from Lana, basically. And so he ends the call with Cockroach, and Cliff comes in and tells Theo that he's taking Rudy to the grandparents' house, and then he'll come back. And Theo is like, I'm not okay, I'm sad, Lana didn't call. And Cliff says, after taking Rudy, I'll go get some hoagies. We can have the Huxtable Man's Club, no women allowed, and they can watch black and white cowboy movies. And Theo was like, okay, sounds good. And so at this point, Claire is still at Hillman, and Denise is home. I feel like I stated this in the last episode, but I have to state that again in this episode. There was that episode that they said that she's gonna be part of the planning committee for the president of Hillman, but it's just very strange to me that you would think she would come home the same time that Denise is home, but I guess scheduling. But this is all in point to Felicia had just given birth, so they of course needed to give her time to spend time with her family. So, but in terms of the timeline of the story, it kind of seems very strange. It just might just be me. I don't know. And so Rudy and Cliff are at the grandparents' house, and Anna says they made spaghetti for her, and then they made corn on the cob and chocolate cake, and Rudy's like, I love chocolate cake, I love spaghetti, I love corn on a cob. She just loves everything. She probably will not leave this house, according to Cliff. And so Rudy says bye to Cliff, but she was like, I think I need to go home with daddy. He might be scared, you know? And I was like, I don't think there's anything to worry about. And Rudy was like, I really should go home, you know? Like, she's scared that something bad is going to happen without her being there. I feel like as a child, I feel like I was like that. I feel like it's such a normal reaction, especially if it's your first time away from home. You know, a lot of my time as a child, I would sleep over at my aunt and uncle's because, of course, I didn't have my grandparents living in the same country as me. But my aunt and uncle, I guess, in a way, took that role. And so I spent a lot of time there. But I don't remember the first time I ever had to sleep over there. I'm not sure. But I feel like that's a very honest reaction. And I like how Russell and Anna are, you know, they said, we'll talk to the stuffed animals. Because originally Rudy's like saying, you know, even the stuffed animals look sad, you know. And so Russell says, we'll talk to them. And we'll basically, they really are consoling her to making her feel better so that she stays. Rudy's about to go upstairs and like Rudy asks Anna, like, are you sure there's no monsters up there? And Anna was like, I'm sure. And so they go upstairs and we cut to the living room at the Huxtable house, and Denise and Vanessa are all dressed up in their dad's clothes to go to the village, and Theo is in his PJs, which look odd to me. If you're watching this episode, tell me, like the pajamas, so they were like purple, and he was like wearing like, I can't remember the socks, if it was like orange, and like he's not wearing pants. Like, of course he's probably wearing boxers, but it's like, do men wear that? Because I thought it's the opposite. Usually they have their shirt off and pants on. Like, what he's wearing is what most girls wear. Like, and I'm not saying I'm not saying it in terms of stereotype, but it just, even back in the 80s, this seems so strange to me. And he's gonna wear that for the men's night. That is, out of all pajamas to wear, that is not a pajama I would wear for men's night, okay? You know, Theo points out to them that, you know, you're gonna get in trouble from dad for wearing his clothes. And they're like, he's not gonna find out. And so Theo says to them, have a good day, good evening, and he tells Vanessa, because Vanessa's wearing his tie, and so he's telling Vanessa, don't mess up my tie. And so he goes in the kitchen, and Denise and Vanessa are getting ready to go. You know, they're planning to take the subway instead of driving because the D train goes into the village. And if you're a listener from New York, let me know if that's accurate, because I don't know if that's accurate. I guess I could have Googled it, but I think it's a little too late at this point since I'm recording right now. And all of a sudden, Denise was like, are you expecting company? And Vanessa was like, no. There are two girls coming up to the door looking for Theo. And guess who they are? Maxine and Lana, of course. And they're surprising Theo. And Denise is like, oh yeah, you sure are surprising him. And so Denise says, I'm gonna go, she'll go get him. And so Denise and Vanessa go to the kitchen and they tell Theo, you know, Maxine and Lana are in the living room. And Theo's like, yeah, right, that's a joke. Like, what kind of joke is this? Like, I didn't hear the doorbell ring. And they were like, yeah, because we were just leaving when they came in. And he still doesn't think what they're saying is true. He's like, you're joking with me. And so he goes out in the living room in his purple PJs that look like a dress in a way, with celery and peanut butter. And he's just like, I can't even describe. He's just like, oh no, this, basically he should have believed his sisters. Okay. So Vanessa and Denise decide to leave to go to the village and says, have a good night. And Theo says, oh, I was just wearing this for men's night, but I'm going to go change. And he basically says, do not leave. And we end Act 1 there and we go into Act 2. We're at the grandparents' house and Rudy is with her 3 pet animals, Bobo, Clarence, and Marcia. Rudy says she really wants to go home, but she'll go home after eating spaghetti, of course, because that's how kids are. If they hear about something good, you got to eat it before you go. You can't just go, you know? And so they decided to go through the grandparents. So in order for the Rudy to feel comfortable, the grandparents suggest looking into old photos, and of course they're all probably black and white photos. And I always love going through old photos. During quarantine last year, I went through 35 years worth of old photos, and it was just great to see. A lot of them were new ones that I've never seen, and it was just like, you're going into the past, and it's nice. And then even now that we're, in 2021, we also have videos from the 80s, because of course this episode aired in 87. Video wasn't like common in the 70s or 60s, so they probably don't have any video. But for us, our generation, we're able to see the video from the 80s and 90s, and it's cool to see that. You're like, what was it like back then? So it's so it comforts Rudy. They get to see a photo of Cliff when he was 5 years old, and they talk about all the hipsters, and Rudy decides to go. So Anna is like, let's try some of my old clothes from back in the day, and they'll model for Russell. And they're like, she was like, yeah, sure. And so we cut back to the Huxtable house, where Theo, Maxine, and Lana are studying. Maxine is, trying to, you could tell she's trying to set up Lana and Theo, but Theo is just not taking the bait, basically. And so, Maxine and Theo, they talk about, how their math teacher is horrible. And they never mentioned anything about Mrs. Westlake. You remember Mrs. Westlake, guys, from last season? Of course, once you have a math teacher, you probably won't have that math teacher again. Actually, though, when I took grade 11 math, I believe I took grade 11 math, grade 12 math, and university calculus by the same math teacher. So it's possible to have the same teacher. So I'm surprised that they didn't bring up Mrs. Westlake again, but they didn't. So it's a different teacher that they're talking about that's horrible. And so, Theo's still not making any moves. So Maxine tells Lana just to call her mom to say, that they're good. They're going to be staying here for a while, and to make that call in the kitchen. And so she goes and takes that call, make that call. So Maxine asks Theo, like, aren't you going to ask out Lana out? And he's like, I don't know. And, like, Maxine points out to Theo that, like, Lana really likes him. Like, really, really likes him. So she will not say no. And, like, Theo keeps saying, like, what if she says no? Maxine's like, no. She is going to say yes. So, and the reason why they came over was because of that, basically, and not for the math homework, because they have higher grades than Theo. So why would they get help from Theo? And so Lana comes back from making that call, and her mom's not worried. And so Theo asks Lana out, and right away she says yes. She was just waiting for this to happen. And, she's been wanting to go out with him for a very long time. And, Theo was like, oh, I didn't know that, And then they basically go through their past relationships. Theo was with Tanya and, with Randy, and Lana was with a whole bunch of other guys, basically. And finally, Maxine was like, okay, when are you guys going to go out? Make a date. We don't need to talk about the past, basically. And I agree with her. They're having trouble deciding a date. And so they asked Maxine to help. And so Maxine says, what about Sunday? And Lana was like, yeah, I'm good with Sunday. And Lana asked Maxine, do you want to come with us? And Maxine was like, you are on your own. I have actually been in this situation a few times. And I'm like, I don't really want to be third wheeling you. That's not what I want. So I'm with Maxine. They're on their own. So, but it was funny to me that they asked her to come with them. So we're back to the grandparents' house, and Rudy and Anna are all dressed up for Russell. And Russell asks Rudy for a dance, and they dance to nice, I guess you would call it some jazz music, I think. I was trying to figure out if I could find the exact music for this. It might be like a sample or something like that, but because I was like, because you know me in music, I always like to play music at the end of these podcast episodes based on the episode, but I couldn't find the song, so I'm sorry, guys. And we cut to being back in the Huxtable house, and Cliff comes home with his hoagies and sees Lana and Maxine, and they both says hi, and he goes back outside checking if this is the right house that came to, because he's like, why are there two girls just randomly sitting in my living room? So they introduce themselves to Cliff, and right away Cliff knows who they are because, of course, Theo has been talking about them all day long, basically. And so Cliff says, oh, so Theo is in this house in a good mood. And they're like, yeah, he's in the kitchen. And so Cliff goes to the kitchen to see Theo, and Cliff pretends that he never saw the girls. And Theo freaks out. He's about to, book it out the door to the living room. And finally, Cliff, tackles him back. Well, not really tackle, because then he would have gone to the ground, but, push him back and be like, whoa, I didn't realize you were going to run over me, basically. They're in the living room, so don't worry. Cliff is disappointed in Theo because it's the first meeting of the Huxtable Men's Club. And the first rule is no woman, and you broke the rule, Theo. And Cliff says, I guess we have to cancel the meeting. And he gives the money to Theo to take the ladies out. And Theo's like, are you sure? And Cliff is like, yeah, if you have a good lady, you go be that with that lady. You don't you don't stay in the club. And so Theo leaves, and he's like, thank you. And then Cliff is like, another rule is if the other man leaves, you get their hoagies. Of course, that's how I do it. I grab all the food that's left over if no one wants to eat the food. I'm like that. So later that night, Cliff is all ready for the first meeting of the Huxtable Men's Club. He has hoagies with chips and soda. And then he also has rice cakes, apple juice, popcorn with no salt. But he throws that all up because that's unhealthy. That is healthy. We want the unhealthy food, okay? By the way, watching that scene, I'm like, right now, my mouth is watering. Oh no. Those chips they look good. I was just like, I just want some potato chips right now. So yeah, that I hate when I see scenes of chips and cookies, and I'm like, can I just grab it out of the screen and eat them? Because they look so good. The soda seemed very big, but do what you want to do, Cliff. So Vanessa and Denise are outside the house, and yet again we see the outside set of the house. We saw this in the previous episode with Sandra and Cliff, and in this episode, literally they walked the corner. If you watch it, they're walking through the corner. This is not the same as the established shot, so it's like continuity error. Continuity error. I literally should just say that constantly. Continuity error. Continuity. And now I'm thinking of an episode of That's So Raven by saying that. But yeah, I don't like that. And so Denise says Cliff will not notice them all dressed up in his clothes because he's watching cowboy movies and eating hoagies. And so Denise and Vanessa basically sneak into the house, but says, hello, Dad. And Cliff is in the middle of a bite of his hoagies, and he tells him, take off my clothes and put it in my closet now, basically. And the phone rings, and it's a pregnant lady in labor, so he has to go to the hospital, and he basically yells to Denise that he's leaving. Very... for me, I could not live in a house like that. But we end the episode right there. And so guest stars for this episode were Earl Hyman as Russell, Clarence Taylor as Anna D. Zion. She's only been in the Cosby Show, and she is in 2 more episodes. She's the one who plays Lana. So of course, the 2 other episodes have to do with her character as Lana. And as I said, she's probably a girl from the hood of New York City. And then we have Tracy Allen Clark as Maxine, and she was in one other show, and that's about it. So she kind of quit acting after the other show that she was on. And of course, Sabrina LaBeouf and Felicia Shaw do not appear in this episode. Lesson for this episode is based on what Cliff said. First rule of Men's Club: if you have a woman, the meeting is over. That straight point. I love that quote. That's a cool quote. If you have a good lady in your life, say bye to your homies. Say bye to the single life, okay? Basically. And then the question I have for you guys is, did you have a hard time asking out a person you really like? Tell me your stories. I would love to hear it. Was it similar to Theo, where, you know, the friend of the friend, the friend of the person you like had to like tell you to ask that person out. I want to hear if you had to be in that situation. Those sound like good stories. But so let me know at Twitter and Instagram at Black TV Show Pod using the hashtag Spends the Night. Which also, you know, the title of this episode was Rudy Spends the Night, and I feel like that storyline was the B storyline of this episode. I felt like the whole Theo and Lana's storyline was the main one, and then of course the C storyline, because it was more of the side part, was the going to the village with the Denise and Vanessa. So I feel like they should have had a different name for this episode. You know, I'm trying to think on top of my head right now. Theo has a girlfriend. I don't know. That could be an episode name. Theo has a girlfriend. I think that would have been better episode name than Rudy Spends the Night, because that to me was like the B storyline. This is the same thing, similar to the episode of the War Stories, where that storyline wasn't the main one, and I didn't understand why they called it the War Stories, but I guess it was an easier way of saying it. So the next episode is episode 63, The Cosby Show season 3, episode 15, Say Hello to a Goodbye. And I will see you all on the next one.